Welcome to the Cosmic Busker. My name is Bobby Cody. In my last video, it was entitled Elongated Skulls of the Riachi Warriors. I referenced a great catastrophe on planet Earth that happened about 12,000 years ago during a period known as the Younger Dryas. Now, this global catastrophe wiped out most of the world's megafauna. Megafauna are huge animals. I think they're over 100 pounds, essentially. Probably also wiped out other hominids like Neanderthal and Denisovan, in my opinion. And it nearly wiped out us as well, Homo sapiens. Now, as frequently happens, a little bit of synchronicity, a few hours after the posting of that Elongated Skulls of the Riachi Warriors video, I came across this particular video from Gaia.com in which George Noory interviews former West Point instructor Michael Jaye, Ph.D. He's a doctor. Michael Jaye wrote a book. It's called The Worldwide Flood: Uncovering and Correcting the Most Profound Error in the History of Science. In his book, Michael Jaye seeks to correct the perception among scientists that a worldwide flood, as represented by a biblical tale of Noah and other stories from around the world, from many disparate countries, because this tale of the flood isn't just a biblical story. Almost every culture around the world has a tale of a worldwide flood that's nearly wiped out humankind. So Michael Jaye tells of how when he moved to Monterey, California, soon after he moved to Monterey, California, Google Earth also came out, and he opened up Google Earth and he took a look at Google Earth, and he found when he looked at Google Earth, Google Earth has essentially gives you the topography, or what the surface of the ocean looks like as well. It doesn't just give you what the topography of the land looks like. It allows you to see underneath the ocean and see what the topography of the ocean looks like as well. And what he saw when he looked at the underneath the ocean of Monterey, he saw river canyons, rivers that continue underneath the ocean. You could see the rivers continuing under the ocean. Now, rivers cannot carve out the land underneath the ocean. If there is these rivers continuing under the ocean, and it carves out the land under the ocean, you can see it up here. I'm going to put up a picture of the particular Monterey area here. If it continues underwater, that means that land underwater was once not covered by water. Rivers can't continue under the ocean and carve out underneath the ocean as well. That topography of that land underneath the ocean had to one time actually not have ocean above it. I'm going to put, like I said, if you take a look here, you can see where the green is, should be somewhere along here, and the blue is the ocean. And if you take a close look, you can see the lines all carving there. That's the rivers continuing under the ocean. How did these rivers continue under the ocean? This used to be land with no water above it other than the river. Now, George Noory and Michael Jaye in this interview, they don't talk about this in particular, but I want to point this out because it's not just the west coast of the United States. This is worldwide. You see this, these river canyons and everything continuing underneath the ocean. Here on the East Coast, I live in New Jersey. Off the coast of New Jersey is one of the largest canyons in the world. This is an underwater canyon. It's bigger than the Grand Canyon. And this is known as the Hudson Canyon. This Hudson Canyon continues out into the ocean and actually off the continental shelf and continues off the continental shelf as well. I'll post it up here. If you take a look, you can see the green is the land, obviously, and then you can see the blue, and you can see where the Hudson Canyon continues, and then off the continental shelf, it drops off, and it continues underneath the ocean, even off the continental shelf. This suggests that not only the continental shelves where there's ocean used to be land, but even in the deep, massive ocean, there was no ocean. That means the oceans didn't really exist potentially 12,000 years ago. This is paradigm blowing, and that's what Michael Jaye talks about in this video. I'm going to throw up real quick a map that he provides in this video and in his book. It's on the cover of his book, The Worldwide Flood. If you take a look at this image that I post up here, you'll take a look and see that areas where it's blue, he hypothesizes, he had a map maker draw this up based on his own research. The areas where the blue is where there were bodies of water. There weren't oceans. There were still large bodies of water, but they weren't oceans. They were essentially just seas in periodic places around the Earth. Now, there's a whole bunch of evidence that he provides in his book, including evidence regarding the biblical flood of Noah, and that regardless whether a person named Noah really existed, and just my own little side thing. There's also the Sumerian civilization, which is the first known civilization on the planet Earth from 4000 BC. That would be about 6,000 years ago. They have a Noah story as well. I believe it was called Utnapishtim was his name, and it was a flood. So he gives some evidence regarding the existence of a flood that happened in the Mediterranean, that came through the Straits of Gibraltar, that essentially created the Mediterranean Sea. That this Mediterranean Sea didn't exist before, and that there was a much smaller sea or lake in that area, and that the flood came in, created the Mediterranean Sea, and continued on up into the Black Sea. But he also talks about Plato's Atlantis, and he talks about in Plato's Atlantis, Plato speaks of canals that intersected through Atlantis, that there were all these canals. Now, you take a look at Google Earth. Let me throw it up here real quick. You'll see right where Plato describes Atlantis as being, when you take a look at Google Earth, you see canals. Put it right up there, boom. The ancient stories are coming to be, particularly about the worldwide flood and Atlantis, are starting to be credited as true based on the evidence we're finding with our new technology and science nowadays. Now, the thrust of Michael Jaye's argument or hypothesis in this regard is that, I'm going to throw the map he made up there again, that's the cover of his book also, is that the Earth didn't have oceans, massive oceans, prior to 12,000 years ago. What happened is a huge comet came down, and comets are essentially made up of all ice. And this huge, massive comet came down and crashed into the Southern Ocean, which would have been south of Madagascar, above Antarctica, and below Africa. That this comet crashed down into onto the planet Earth, and essentially this is a huge, massive comet. Comet's mostly ice. So what happened is, boom, it brought this just massive deluge of ice or water onto the Earth. And this is what ultimately created all the oceans on the planet. And his map that he got is he did some analysis, mathematical and scientific analysis of the size of the comet, how much water it would have brought, and he basically reversed it out and said, okay, let's say that this huge thing brought all this water. What would the Earth have looked like without all of this water that the comet would have brought? And that's where we get this map. Link will be provided down below, so you can see the interview with him in full. He talks about when he first brought up this at a lecture being mocked, and people just mocked him regarding his hypothesis, despite the fact that there is an abundance of evidence that it is true. There are other hypotheses as well. I'm not saying his is the only hypothesis that could be true. Robert Schoch has one that the Younger Dryas event was actually triggered by sunstorms. And Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock talk about comets and/or asteroids. We don't know yet. We don't know what caused this. We do know that this massive extinction event and global catastrophe that changed the planet Earth definitely happened 12,000 years ago. So I encourage people to click on the link below with the George Noory Mark Jaye interview. Do your own research. Make your own opinions, and please, comment down below whether you agree or disagree. Any type of new information that overturns the current paradigm, those who are locked in their belief systems and refuse to look at the evidence and refuse to believe irrefutable evidence always go to mockery. So, Michael Jaye, more power to you. Withstand whatever type of mockery and garbage that is thrown your way. Ultimately, those of us who are courageous enough to confront this new evidence and try to come to terms with it will be proven right. So everyone, please comment down below. Like I said, like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching, everyone.